Would you join with me in our responsive reading printed in your bulletin this morning? How rich and beautiful is the bounty gathered. Gold, grain, crimson apples, grapes, and purple and green. From this beauty, let us be inspired to a harvest of heart and mind. Be careful with all lies. A harvest of reverence for the wondrous power of life.
We're about to recognize, and actually we already know who they are. You're about to recognize and learn the names of our newest members who in the last 2 weeks have added their name to our membership book. So I'd like to make sure that Brian, who we saw just a moment ago, returns up here along with Liza Ingraham, our volunteer ministries coordinator, to help us assemble all the people that are here today, and so you can meet them face to face.
So this morning we honor our newest members, those who have signified their desire to be full members by signing our membership book. As human beings, We experience relationship often on 3 levels. So many teachers talk about this. Our relationship to ourself, our relationship to others on a one-to-one basis, and then our relationship to community or to a group or a sense of belonging, right? Another way of saying that is our sense of solitude, our sense of connection, and our sense of belonging. Some would add that there's a 4th category or way in which we are in the world, spirit, and some of us, of course, experience spirit through these relationships with self, other, and community. Here at Fountain Street, we seek to support individuals to craft their spiritual journeys for responsible and creative action in the world. Today, this group of individuals declares that they want to formally belong to this community. And so I will share their names. Please forgive me in advance if I get any of the pronunciations wrong. But please come forward as you feel welcome. Okay, Carmen Faritel and Peter, Ileana Hernandez, Sam Jones-Darling, Sue King, Peter Marantine, Eric Newell, Laura and Todd Norton, Jacqueline Pullman, Fred and Judy Vocino, Carolee and Martin Witteveen Lane, Aaron Smith and Naomi Brown Smith, and Asher, and your families are welcome to come with you as well.
Why do we come to church? Each one of us has our individual reasons. And as an individual, each one of us can feel reverence and awe and give thanks really anywhere and any time. We can all, each of us, take pause in our labors to think about ultimate things. But what we cannot do by ourselves is to be one with the other. To make the thing that we see in your bulletin this morning named koinonia, the fellowship whose basis is in shared life. Without other people, we cannot know the fullness of reverence, the depth of awe, the tenderness of gratitude. Without another, we will not take enough time from our urgent chores to ponder ultimate things. And this is why congregations exist.
But why this place? Those who become members here are your disciples, in the original sense of the word, which means students. Members of Fountain Street Church are students of life. The truth that you find inside of you and the truth that connects all of us. You are disciples of goodness, filled with the hope that we can all be better than we've been and must become if the world is to survive. You are disciples of beauty, not as a mere decoration to life, but as a prophetic sign of the fullness of life itself.
But we are also, of course, more than students, more than learners. Each and every one of us, we are teachers as well, sharing our wisdom at each turn. We are even, we might dare say, those prophets living our principles. We might even dare to say that we are saviors in the sense that we redeem the world through acts of faith and hope and love and joy. And so, we have a question for you. Do you, by joining this church, dedicate yourself to a life of discipleship, of learning, of prophecy, and of teaching? If so, please answer, I do. I do. This is a mighty task. It's not always easy, and one that certainly is lifelong. And so we are in need of the support of one another.
This church promises to stand with you and sustain you as you walk the path of a liberal faith. Now, will you, the congregation, welcome them as fellow disciples of truth and goodness and beauty? Will you learn from them as well as teach them, follow them as well as lead them, receive their gifts as well as give your own? If so, please answer, we will. We will. sharing our vision of a world where everyone is a student, a teacher, a prophet, and a savior is our mission. We bid you to free your mind, grow your soul, and change the world.
Welcome.
Yes. So now you can say thank you. How about that?
Welcome. Welcome. Welcome.
Rise, O fathers, rise, let's go meet Him in the skies. We will hear the angels singing in that morning. Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning. Rise, O mothers, rise, let's go meet Him in the skies. We will hear the angels singing in that morning. Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home. Brothers, all fare ye well. Brothers, all fare ye well. Brothers, all fare ye well. For I'm on my journey home. Sisters, all fare ye well. Sisters, all fare ye well. Sisters, all fare ye well. For I'm on my journey. Journey rise, O fathers, rise. Journey we will hear the angels singing that morning. Journey rise, O fathers, hear them sing in that morning. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here, for I'm on my journey home. No time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no time to tarry here. Rise, O fathers, rise, O fathers, no time to tarry here, no time to wait for you, no tarry here. I'm on my Oh, I really do believe that just before the end of time, we will hear the angels singing in that morning.
In the Christian lectionary this morning, Paul is talking to the church in Ephesus. Those who are old enough to remember stand-up comedy of a different era can remember a sketch in which a drunken minister or pastor does the evening sermonette before the channels used to sign off. That may be an unrecognizable reference to anyone under 40. And the pastor was reading from Ephesians, and he said, the first lesson my reading this evening is from Ephesians. It says, "Hello, Ephesians." It doesn't, but in essence it does, because Paul is writing to a community of people from a distance, giving them encouragement during tough times. And in that letter that we have in the scriptures that are used by the Christian church, there are these words: "I have heard of your faith and your love toward all the saints, and for this reason I do not cease to give thanks as I remember you in my prayers." Isn't that nice that it turns up at Thanksgiving? "I pray that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation as you come to know him, so that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know the hope to which he has called you." I'll come back to that reference later as well. And a short sonnet, actually all sonnets are kind of defined as 14 lines, from John Masefield, an early 20th century poet. He writes, "Here in the self is all that man can know of beauty, all the wonder, all the power, all the unearthly color, all the glow. Here in the self which withers like a flower, here in the self which fades as hours pass, and droops and dies, and rots and is forgotten, sooner by ages than the mirroring glass in which it sees its glory still unrotten. Here in the flesh, within the flesh behind, swift in the blood and throbbing on the bone, beauty herself, the universal mind, eternal April, wandering alone, the God, the Holy Ghost, the atoning Lord, here in the flesh, the never yet explored." My title today refers to a central doctrine of the Christian church, namely the incarnation, and the Word was made flesh, which is the whole point of Advent and Christmas. So why am I starting a week early? I'll come to that later too. Last week, if you were here, I turned a page in the history of our church in this long fall excursion through the story of Fountain Street Church. I turned the most dramatic page, perhaps of all, when Duncan Littlefair arrived here in 1944, young, handsome, confident, smoking cigarettes, driving a convertible, scandalizing Grand Rapids with his very presence. He arrived here to serve a church that was in decline. Both he and the church were gambling, and if they were wrong, this church would have died and he would have moved on. Indeed, he planned to move on. If you're a poker-playing person, you might say that they drew an inside straight. You know what that means, maybe? Say you have 4 cards, 6, 7, 8, and 10, and you give away another card hoping to draw a 9. Now, if you know there are only 4 9s in a deck and there are 52 cards, that means you have a 6% chance of getting what you want. Not a good bet. But that's what happened. They drew the inside straight. Duncan was exactly the right man at exactly the right time, and nobody knew it for sure until after they had dealt the cards. I could note many events and accomplishments, which I started to last week, but for those of you who are interested, do read about them for yourself. We have a wonderful 2-volume church history. But better yet, there are still many in this community who were there. Ask them. Ask them about how the ACLU was founded here, and Planned Parenthood, and the Choice Fund. Ask them about the controversial speakers that came, including Malcolm X. Ask them about the musical groups, including Iron Butterfly. While Duncan continued to flog the pretentious and the puritanical from this pulpit, which he did almost instantaneously from 1944 on, it was in the 1950s that Verdi Reiser, his colleague, where he made Sunday school into character school, which I described last week. And then in the 1960s, it was the high school group, our Fountain Club, that brought all those rock and roll groups to FSC, abetted quite cheerfully by Jack Bowers, a young clergyman enthralled by Duncan's personality and this church. And even Duncan's magnificent preaching, which held people raptured week after week, would not have been quite as filling without Bev Howerton's choral genius and his flamboyant organ playing over 3 decades. What I'm saying is that the reason this church achieved as much as it did was not because Duncan did it, but because others did so much more. Though he could be dictatorial, and I use that word quite literally, a German ministry student visited here and commented, remember he's a German ministry student, commented that this is the only true dictator he had ever run into. It should be noted that despite that immense power that Duncan exerted over this place, other people felt empowered to do things as well. His staff, notably, who ran headlong down the field doing marvelous things, not all of them successes, and in doing so recruited others, members and friends who were drawn into leadership by the thrill of it all. And that's how we became one of the largest liberal churches in the country for a generation. Not just because Duncan was so much fun to listen to on Sunday, but people did things on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. What this stage in our history says about liberal religion in general, and what it means for all of us here, is the reason I chose that title, "And the Word was made flesh." I've read Duncan's sermons. There are many of them. They're all stored away. They are very good. They're also very dated. Most of us preachers find that our words are really only good for a short while. Now, he did write a few books, largely created from sermons, but they really never sold all that well. You would have thought that someone with that kind of power would have had a written audience, a publishing audience. But it dawned on me as I was thinking about this that Duncan's words were not really the source of his power. What gave the words power was that Duncan lived the life he talked about. He embodied the spirit of liberal religion. He embodied this church. He incarnated it. He gave flesh to his words, and his flesh gave life to his words. And that's my point. He lived the message that he spoke. That's incarnation. To bring to life abstract words and make them how you live. And it continues today. Maybe you've dropped in on Wednesday recently. You know there's a group that meets here on Wednesday evenings in addition to the women's chorus. Am I right, Jason? Yes. They practice yoga. It's very popular these days. And they also find ways to make the world better. There are lots of places to learn yoga these days, but what makes this particular program interesting is that it combines the contemplative, feel-good part of yoga with the activist, do-good part of the world. And it calls itself Embody Grand Rapids, as in incarnate. Most of those who come are not members of the church. If you accuse them of such, they would deny it in a hot minute. And yet it is, this community is part of our church. How? Partly because its founder is married to one of my associates, that would be Dana Christian, who's married to Jason. But the point here is not that there's this marital relationship between him and the leader of Embody Grand Rapids. This group is a part of this church in another and deeper way, the way Duncan embodied, and I'm going to have to digress a bit to make this point. If you were here last week, I read from Paul's famous letter to the Corinthians, that passage on the church as having many parts, members, and how they all belong to one body, though the hand is different from the eye, and so on. I like to hope that if Paul knew as much biology as we do right now, he would know that our bodies are even more complex than he knew, and they are more intertwined as well. Consider the mitochondria. Wow, you didn't expect to hear that word in a sermon, did you? Mitochondria. These are organelles inside of your cells. Do you remember high school biology? I know I'm pushing some of this a little hard for you guys. It appears that these organelles, these are structures inside your cells, are what create the juice your cells work on. It's called adenosine triphosphate, and don't ask me how they make it, but they do. What's important is that it's a good chance that they did not evolve from our cells, but were a separate life form so long ago that when they invaded us like a virus, I mean us, meaning other multi-celled creatures, they merged and became a symbiotic life form. They don't know you're here. And unless I talk about them, you don't think about them, and yet you cannot function without your mitochondrial DNA. A little bit more up to scale. This may not be pleasant, but I think it's important. You're not digesting your food by yourself. Your intestines have many bacteria in them, and you don't want to get rid of them. They help you stay alive. They help you digest your food. They don't know you're here. And unless you're thinking about them, you don't think about them, and you don't want to think about them. I understand that. But my point is that our mitochondria, the intestines, the guts, the microbes in our intestines, there are bacteria on your skin you can't get rid of, and you don't want to because they keep the bad ones from getting in. Do you understand what I am saying? That you are way more than you. You're way more than you think you are. It turns out that our individuality is an immense plurality all the way down to the DNA. You are each a planet teeming with life that you need in order to be you. And I think that's what Paul would have said if he could have known this, that in every sense a body is made up not just of parts but of individuals within those parts that connect and collaborate, that form a koinonia of being that creates our particularity. And in just such a way, every person in this room, yes, every person in this room is part of Fountain Street Church. We get a reminder of that when we do our annual meeting and the members can vote, and that's an important thing because without the members, there is no church. It's just a building with a lot of bills. You are the church. But I wish you to notice that the Grand Rapids Women's Chorus is part of Fountain Street Church. You don't have to be a member. I don't even care if you're a member. What I do care is that you are an organelle, a body within the body, creating something that we get to share in, not just today, but every week. Monday through Friday, you can go into the office and there are 3 administrative staffers. They don't belong to the church. They're not members. They don't pledge. But if they're not here, we can't do this on Sunday. The building staff makes sure the place is clean and ready to work. They don't belong here. You may not even notice them, but they are part of Fountain Street Church. There, Connor is in back working the board. He doesn't belong here. He just draws a paycheck, and yet he's a part of Fountain Street Church. But it goes so far beyond that. Every week, developmentally disabled young people come to our church and help set up character school. You don't see them. They don't see you. They are part of the body of Fountain Street Church. Alcoholics Anonymous meets here every weekday. We see their faces. They go down to look after each other. They are part of Fountain Street Church. In fact, they drop off a little envelope with their collection every week. If it's more than $5, we're thrilled. Because it's not the money that we're here to care about. A few times a year, Grand Rapids Community College comes in, as they will this afternoon. Their students will be here, members of the community. They may never come to Fountain Street Church. They may cordially loathe it to their neighbors, but while they are here, they are part of Fountain Street Church. This year, the opera will stage a production of Noah's Flood in this place. It will be full of people who would never worship here, and yet for that day, they will be part of Fountain Street Church. Laugh Fest comes. People will spend a lot of money to listen to very, shall we say, profane words coming out of this place. And they are part of Fountain Street Church. Our social ministry collection goes out beyond here every week. It is helping kids in Nepal learn and El Salvador, but it also serves homeless men and the needy in Grand Rapids. And yes, even the men who sleep on our portico and make you feel uncomfortable are part of Fountain Street Church. And the kids who are smoking cigarettes and leaving their butts on the corner, they're part of Fountain Street Church. The body of Fountain Street Church has no limit. 1,200 people have liked our Facebook page and get a daily bit of wisdom. They will never come in our door, and yet we are nourishing them, and they consider themselves part of us, at least virtually. People have watched our YouTube videos 32,000 times. They have way too much time on their hands. Hundreds of adults who grew up here as Fountain Clubbers live here and around the world. Some of them are joining other churches, infecting others with our DNA. Isn't that exciting? And just this week, someone posted this to our Facebook page, which tells you what we are doing when you're not watching. He writes, I've always seen this church on my way to school at Grand Rapids Community College, and I've seen all the good it can do, and it has always struck my curiosity. And now that I am finding myself writing about it, I have found out there is so much more here. I am really happy to see that this church is inspiring, non-judgmental, non-denominational, inspiring, loving, and above all, human. Thank you for being a game changer in my mind and heart, that not all churches are hateful. God bless. We are succeeding, my friends, one person at a time, who is discovering a humane life as possible along with a spiritual life. Did you just feel a bit of inspiration right there? Just a teeny bit, not from me, but from Jason, who wrote that. To be inspired is literally what happens in the book of Genesis when it says God bent down and breathed the life into the dust that he had assembled into Adam. So goes the tale. Well, that's what we do. That's what liberal religion does. It breathes life into bodies that feel lifeless or fearful or alone or scared or confused. It breathes life into bodies, inspiring them by teaching, by preaching, by working, and sometimes scolding. And we do it not to save your soul, but to save your life. The poem by John Masefield that I read earlier appears in our hymn book in a slightly edited form to fit inside of a song. And in that version it says, "Here in the flesh is all that we can know of beauty, all the wonder, all the power." All we know, the only thing we know, is that life matters. This flesh, this life, this place, this time are precious beyond measure. It is a sensation more than a thought, a feeling more than a fact, and no word, not God, not Jesus Christ, no word can capture it. It is just there. In its purest form, it is a trembling, something touched briefly only now and then, found in the most unlikely places, when the matterness of life comes and fills you, inspires you. It is for this reason that I do not cease to give thanks for you. I pray that you may find a spirit of wisdom and revelation in our times together, as Paul had said, that with the eyes of your heart enlightened, you may know the wordless hope that has called you here and sustains you here and sends you forth from here, and that sometimes, just now and then, you sense the mystic cords that connect us into one body as a church, into one body as a species, cords that make holy every life and every place and every time. If we had eyes to see and ears to hear, That's why that man said so many weeks and reminding us so many years that this too, indeed, is a day which the Lord has made, that we should rejoice and be glad in it, because until we have done that, we are not yet alive. And so may it be. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer.